Um, Hello guys, please welcome to today's stream. Please, if you can hear me, please you know can drop a comment in the chat box and let me know if you can hear me. So I'm just trying to set up and um you know get my mic working and also do some other things like inform people on Twitter and on some other groups that you know that we're already starting. So please, if you can hear me, please leave a comment on the chat box so that I can start. Please, guys, can you hear me? Can anyone hear me? All right. Thanks. Thank you. So, guys, please, if you're on Twitter, please, you can help me retweet, so that more people get to join the live session. So I will just officially say once again, thank you, for coming on here. Um, yeah. So basically, what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be building an algorithm. So basically, your music, your playlist, right? So you have like a a something like Spotify, right? So on Spotify, you have your playlist. So I'm going to be writing or building the algorithm that is behind picking each of the musics that you have on your playlist and playing them sequentially. So it's a it's not really complex, but it has a lot of branches to it. So I'm going to try as much as possible to keep it simple. The purpose of keeping it simple is because I don't want to start. I wouldn't have enough time to go into things like shoveling and all that. So I will just focus on um, you know picking it in an orderly manner, similar to how your favorite musics would play one after the other, something like that. So I'll try as much as possible to make the life um, you know, as fun as possible, and then we'll move from there. So once again, thank you for joining me on this one, and I will just go ahead and share my screen, and we'll start from there. So guys, please, you can go on Twitter and help me retweet, and also if you're seeing this from YouTube, you can also drop a comment and also share the link. I really appreciate. Thank you. All right. So I will just quickly share my screen. Share my screen. Okay. Share window. Okay. So so yeah. So if you're new to my channel or you're new to what we do here, we basically just talk about Rust, build stuffs in Rust, learn concepts in Rust and all that. So like I said before, we are going to be building a music streaming playlist, the algorithm behind it. So I'm already looking at my code base. You would see I'd already added some music here just to keep the live session shorter. So I don't want it to be as long to take so much time, right? So but I will try as much as possible to make the live session as fun as possible. So when we think about the problem, right? First of all, we want to be able to figure out how we can play a music, right? How do we get to play music in Rust, pick the music from our playlist and you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Hello? Oh, what's happening? Okay, sorry about that. So so we have to figure out how we do that and pick it from our playlist and um you know play a sound and all that. So, okay, thanks. So, when I was, researching about this, I came across a very interesting library in Rust, and I think I already opened my place, like the documentation for it. So, there is this Rust library that is called Rodeo, and what it does is it helps us to, you know, play, sounds, or helps us to. It's kind of it helps us to play sounds, right? Something like that, you know. So what we'll be doing here is would be, you know, getting the stream that would, handle the default sound from our physical device. That is in this case my laptop, and then would also load it in the file system and try to stream it and all that, right? So, this documentation is kind of, it has the part where you can play it from the file system, has the part where you can stream it, so just a dummy sound, just for the sake of practicing and all that. But I will not really be going into most of the things here. But basically, the main concept of this library is the source trait, which represents a sound. So, in order to play a sound, there are three steps. So, the first step to play a sound, we have to, we create an object that represents the streaming sound. It can be a sine wave, it can be a buffer or a decoder. So it goes on and on. Then we go on to, get an input stream to handle a physical device, right? So we use the output stream try default. So I'll get to that with time. So as we keep going into this, we see that um, you know there are a lot of things here to look at, which are too technical. I'm trying as much as possible to not be too technical with this, and because I know that there could be people who are not really technical that are also on the live. But then again, right, one thing to look out for is that um, this particular library is built on something called CPAL, right? So there is a CPAL GitHub. So it stands for Cross Platform Audio Library. And what this library does is, it's a low level library for audio and input output in Rust. So it does a lot of things, a lot of details here. And then there is another package again called Symfony. So what Symfony does is, Symfony, it helps us with decoding the sound, right? So we have different sound types. We have like the one we are going to be working. I'm going to be working with today is mostly MP3, right? But it can also decode for MP4, OGG, Wave, WebM, and all that, right? So, that this is just like a basic overview of the what I'm going to be building on in order to make this work or make this happen. So, and without further ado, I will just go over to the code base and we'll start writing some code. So, like I said before, when we want to do something like this, we have to first of all figure out what we want to do, like take it step by step, right, sequentially. And the first step here is to be able to play a sound in the first place, right? Let's play a sound and see if we'll be if how successful we'll be able to do that. So the first thing that I would do is to first of all, I had already added the package. So there is something called cargo.toml. It's similar to package.json in Rust. So if you're new, it's similar to package.json in JavaScript. When you're working in a node environment. So if you are new to Rust, this will not confuse you that much. So I've already included the library here, and the library is the Rodeo library, right? Just as I've showed here. So that is I've already included it there. So this would now enable me to be able to use it in my code, right? So now what I'm going to do now is to so the first thing I would say use Rodeo. Rodeo, that's the name of the library. And there I want to get the decoder, the output stream, and sync. So in that place, I would decoder, decoder. then output stream and sync. So later on, I will explain what I would use these three guys for. Then the next thing I want to do, so this is what will enable me to play the sound from my computer. So the next thing I'll do is to get the file and the buffer. So the file and the buffer is they are going to come directly from the raw standard library, and they are going to enable me to play to get the sound, the file. Then I'll pass it into the Rodio library, and I'll be able to decode it and output the stream. So when I output the stream, I'll be able to play a sound, right? So the next thing I'll do is to get use from standard library. Then I'll get fs and then file, something called file. So there's a mistake somewhere, right? Then the next thing again, I want to get the buffer. So I have use standard. So STD is not for sexually transmitted disease. It's for standard library, right? So please don't confuse it. Thank you. Yes, I'm finally on Twitter. Yes, I'm finally on the Twitter stream. Thank you. Um, then from the STD, I'll get the IO. So IO stands for input or output. So IO, and in the IO, I'll get my buff reader. Buff. It's called buff reader. Trying to see if I no, buff reader. Already exactly. So I keep making these mistakes. All right. So now that I've imported everything I need to make this happen, so the next thing I am going to do now is to write the function that is going to be in charge of playing the music. So I will just name this function. I'll give it a simple name. I'll just give it a very simple name. Um, oh yeah. So for now, I don't really have. I'm not pushing these things to GitHub yet. So yeah, I should. I think with time, I should have a GitHub. I should have a GitHub with time. And gradually, I'll get there. But for now, I'm just doing my stuff, and with time, you know, I would have this on GitHub. But thank you everything for mentioning that. So back to what I was saying. I'll write a function, and I will just I'm bad with function names, so you guys should manage me as I am. So I'll say play song. I'll just call it play songs. Give it an S just to make it unique. So this is how we create a function in Rust. Then here, um, first of all, I want to you know get the output stream, right? And from the output stream, I want to get some things like the stream handle and the stream itself. So the first thing I would do is I would call that output stream, and in the output stream, I will get the try default. If you remember from the documentation, right? From the documentation, there was a time I mentioned something about the output stream try default. So what it does is it and gets an output stream handle to a physical device. For example, get a stream to a system default sound device. What are they writing here? I don't even understand. Or am I the one that is not reading it well? Anyways, what it does is it enables us to stream, you know, from a physical device. Basically, in summary, that's what it means. So now I now have to handle like do some kind of unwrap, right, to handle errors and stuff. So now that I've done this, I would say let, so kind of equating it to a variable, and I would say kind of like the structuring. And in there, I need some things. So I need the stream underscore stream, and I also need the stream handle, right? So we can actually delve deep into this, and I can go deep into this and start explaining every single stuff here. But trust me, this life is not going to end, and I cannot spend the whole day here. So I have a mistake somewhere in my code here. All right. All right. So now I have this. And the next thing I'm going to do is to use my sync. So I would say sync. Once again, this time around is try new. So guys, in case you are wondering, all these things are coming directly from the documentation, right? It's not like I have all this code in my head, or I memorized it. I didn't memorize it. So everything is in the documentation for this particular library, right? Because if we go down and we look at the sync, this is the sync itself, right? You will see the try new here, sync try new. So that's exactly what I'm doing, right? So what it does is stream must live as long as the sync. So we are trying to this particular line is what I'm trying to do, right? So I'm trying to play the sound. So when I do this, I will be able to get the sound from my computer and pass it into this stream. Then Rodeo will be able to play that sound for me. So this package will be able to play the sound for me. So it's not like I have all these things or I memorized it or something. Everything is in the documentation, right? So moving forward, so I would say try new, like we've seen in the documentation. Then in there, I want to pass a reference to the stream handle, right? So reference has to do with Rust ownership, borrowing, and stuff. That's another topic, but we'll still get to that as we go on in our streams, where I talk about the basics of the language and all that. So I'm lazy, so I'll have to quickly do this, pick it from there. Then I'll do unwrap once again, unwrap, and yeah. So now I have to equate this to a variable. So I'll say let's sync. Just give it that name sync. All right. Why am I having? I'm just making unnecessary errors today. So yeah. All right. So after that step, the next step now we want to do is the part where we get the file from our local environment. So looking at this place, right? I already added some songs here just to make it a little bit faster, and I didn't want to waste more time. But for the purpose of making the whole experience fun, I would go ahead and add what's it called? I'll go ahead and add a I'll go ahead and I'll add a music from a free music from Pixbay, right? I'll add a free music to it, so just for the fun of it, right? So that it doesn't look like you know I'm playing the sound from somewhere else or something like that. So without wasting much time, let's get the sound from our our computer. So the first thing we'll do is to use our buff reader. So use the buff reader, and in the buff reader, we want to the new method, and there we then pass our file. So this file here, pass it into this place. Say file and open file open. So then we want to pass the name of the song, right? We want to pass the name of the song. But in this case now, I don't have. I'm just assuming that I don't have any song. Right? I'm assuming I don't have any song. So I'll go to Pixby, pick a song, and add it here, right? So, but before I do that, I will just unwrap this, and I would say let it be file. Let it be called file. I'll save this, right? Then what else? What else? So let's get a sound. Let's get a sound. Um so a couple of sounds, right? So these are like free sounds that don't have any copyright claim on them. I don't want anybody to report me if I stole their song. So we'll just look for a good song. So something like this. I think I already have this one on my. I think it's thriller. I already have this one here, so I will just look for a new one. So I cannot I could actually use this song. No, no, I can't because you could strike me for copyright using something that is intellectual property. I can't use the song unless I get permission from him. If not, he could report me and they will take down the video. So that's why I cannot use. I have to use a song that is, that does not have any copyright claim on it. So that's why I'm here, right? So I'll just be, yeah, it would have actually been fun to use Apple's song because the guy is someone I really like, right? So I can't do that because I don't have the rights to do that. I like this one. It's just 30 seconds. And I'm also on YouTube, not just I'm also streaming this on YouTube. I can't just I can't use it. Anyways, let's go with this one. The tactical killer. So I will download this. So I've downloaded this. So I have the tactical thriller. So I will show this in my folder. And what I will do is I'll then go ahead to drag it and drop it here in my working environment. So you see me drag. So this is the music here, right? So I'll drop it here. So I now have the tactical thriller here. Um, so the next thing I will do now is just to play it here in my VS Code, right? In my work environment. To um so yeah, so there will be time for questions and answers. So I'll come back to I'll answer your question, everything. Yeah. So this is the song. So I'm playing it now directly from my VS Code. So what I would do now is to get the name of this song and pass it into the code I've written. So that line of code, right? So I would so there is this really is this where I get the names. I would try to rename it, then Control A and Control C, copy it, come back to the main function, and in this string here, I would pass that function here, right? So I'll pass it here. So once I've done that, the next thing for me now is for me to decode. So if you remember from the documentation, I said something about a decoder, right? So there is a decoder. Let me check. Yeah, so there is this decoder from the file system, right? Sorry, from Rodeo itself that decodes the file. So if you remember when I showed this Symphonia, so I said Symphonia is a pure Rust audio decoding and media demixing library supporting a whole lot of sound formats, right? But in this case, it's what we are looking at for is MP3 because our format is MP3, right? So um, so that's what we need the decoder. So the decoder is actually built on top of Symphonia, right? So we are going to be using the decoder. Then we are going to pass the file, which is this line, into the decoder, and then we are going to unwrap, right? So let's without wasting much time, let's just go ahead and do that. So say I'll call it source SOURC, and I would say decoder decoder on new, and in there I would pass the buff reader. So this buff reader, right? So I'll pass buff reader, and I would say new, and I'll pass my file in that place. So the file that I've declared on line 10, then I would unwrap. Okay. So after that, I now have to use the last of these guys, which is the seek function itself, right? So the sync function or method that's coming from the Rodeo, I'm now going to use it to append the source so that I can, you know, play it. I can play the song or something like that, and also put like a sleep time of like 10 seconds between each play. So I would test everything out and to make sense. So let me increase size of my VS Code a little bit. I think it is small. So now that I'm at this junction, the next thing I will do is to use the sync. So I'll say sync. Hold on. Sync. Okay. So I have my sync. Then I'll do dot append. So I want to append source. Okay, looking at this again. Yeah, so sync dot append. Right. So we'll do sync dot append. Sorry. So I want to sync dot append. Then I'll pass my source. So this in there. Undo S. Yep. Then from the standard library, I want to get the thread and I want to sleep. Right. So say std thread sleep, and inside there standard library. I want to pass the time. So this is the time that it will take to play. So the time I'll set a duration. So in the time there is a duration, and from uh, sec, and I'll say 10. Play for like 10 seconds. So this would each play the sound for like 10 seconds. This particular tactical thriller sound, right? So once I do that and I save in the main function, so the main function is like the entry for every Rust application, right? It's the entry for every Rust application. So in the main function, I would then so this is from sex, not sex, sex as in secs, for you guys who quote me wrongly. All right, so what I would do at this point is just to call this function here. So I would say play songs. I'll just call this guy here. And I'll save. So if I go ahead now and run this code, hopefully all things being equal, um, you know, all things being equal, it should. Yeah, that's the beauty of Rust, right? No nonsense with npm and stuff. But we still have the cargo lock. But yeah, still have cargo.toml, but that's by the way. So I'll go ahead and I'll run this code. So I'll say cargo run, and hopefully we should be able to play the sound for 10 seconds. So if you listen, you'll be able to hear. And if you take a note, you'll see that the process is still running here. Now you can see that it's done and it printed hello world, which is the next um, line of code, and it ended. That's because I played the song for 10 seconds, right? So add a more, I can add a more, you know, would I say a more beautiful or descriptive message or something, like I can just say starting to play song, then ended playing the song. So I use this print line, put it here, say, something like song is starting, uh, and song has ended after 10 seconds. Save this. I'll do my cargo fmt. So use cargo fmt to format, kind of how we have like linting in JavaScript, right? So cargo fmt helps you to format your code. So if you look at line 19, you would see that they are not on the same line. It's not on the same line with these two guys. So once I run this particular line of code, it should arrange everything. So you can see it has arranged the code in a very, very beautiful and nice way. So now I'll go ahead and run the code again. And once I run the code, I should be able to see song is starting, and immediately the sound would play. And after it's done playing, after 10 seconds, I will then print this one to the terminal saying song has ended after 10 seconds. So let's do that. So you can see it. Song is starting. So the song has started playing. All right. So the song has finished playing after 10 seconds. And we can now see that it said song has ended after 10 seconds. So this is the first part of the whole thing. The next aspect now is the application of the queue data structure. So if you know if you're familiar with queues, right? When you go to a bank to buy something, to withdraw money or do whatever you want to do, right? Um, you stand in line, right? So the first person to enter the line is the first person that will be attended to. People will always enter the line from the back, right? This is similar to how the playlist in your favorite music apps like Spotify and YouTube Music and the rest of them, how they work, right? So when you add a music to your playlist, the first music you add is the first one that you play. After you're done playing that music, you go on to the second one. You keep on going that way. So that's the algorithm behind your playlist and how it works, right? So the next stage that I'm going to go into now is how to then go ahead and implement like a queue, and we'll then use that queue to manually, right? Manually add musics to the queue. Then would and it's that's called enqueuing, right, in programming terms. So we'll enqueue music in on the queue, and for us to play music, we'll have to dequeue a music from that queue, right? So that's the next stage of what we are going to do, and I hope I'm able to do that in how many minutes do I have left? I think I have 30 minutes. I don't want to stay long in this life. Anyways, yeah. Um, so that's the next step. So in order for us to do that, we have to create a queue. There are so many ways of creating a queue, right? I could go ahead and decide to write it manually, but that would take a lot of time, and it would not be anywhere as efficient as using the queue that is provided by, the Rust itself, right? The Rust standard library. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to use the vecdq. So there's something called a vecdq in Rust. So if I go back to the documentation, oh no, mm, hold on. So there is something called a vecdq. So this should be it. Okay. So we have the vecdq. So okay. So this is like you know, so it's a the default usage of this type as a queue is to use the pushback. So we use the pushback to enqueue elements to the queue, and then pop front to remove from the queue. So the enqueuing and the dequeuing, right? So the parts where we have to add things to the queue, we use the pushback, and pop front we use it to remove stuffs from there. We also have another method called the front. We have so many there are so many stuff, but the point here is that the vec queue itself is an already implemented queue data structure in Rust that I can just use out of the box without having to really re-implement the whole thing myself, right, from scratch, because that's going to take a lot of time, and I don't want to do that. I am lazy. I don't want to do that. Anyways, I don't stop too much. Let's go on. So now, um, first thing I would have to do, looking at the documentation, right? It says, you know, we have to do this, right? We have to, from the standard library in collections, we have to get vecdq, right? So once we get vecdq from there, then we somehow, one way or the other, start putting things in the queue, moving things from the queue, you know, go on gradually from there, right? So the first thing I would do, going back to the code, is somewhere here at the top, I would say use STD. So once again, STD is not for sexually transmitted disease; it is for standard library. So please, guys, don't confuse it. Um, So so in the standard library, we would get collections, and in collections, we will then get our vec dq. So yep. So we have that here. Save it. So the first thing we'll do is to create a queue. Meanwhile, I will comment this out so it doesn't stand in our way. So I would say let's queue queue be equals to vec dq dot new, right? So I'll just click this twice. So I know that in this particular vec, I want the type to be a string slice, right? But for the purpose of learning, whenever you see an underscore in being passed like this, so whenever you see an underscore being passed like this, it means that this particular data structure can take any type, a type of anything, right? It can take an I32, which is an integer. It can take a boolean, which is true or false. It can take a tuple, right? And which other one? It can take a float. But to be very, very, very specific, we are going to pass a string slice. So pass reference to string slice, because exactly that's what we want. Because we'll be passing the name of each of these musics, into the queue. We'll be pushing it into the queue, just like when you add music to your playlist, right? So I'll just add a comment here and say this is us creating a queue. Then the next step for us is to, so now we've created our queue. So the next step for us now um, is to add elements to our queue. I'm trying as much as possible to not use too much technical terms, but basically it is called enqueuing. So adding stuff to the queue is enqueuing to the queue, right? So first thing I'll do is I'll say, okay, let's add elements to the queue. I'll say queue, uh, queue dot pushback. So we want to use pushback. So there would pass our value into it, right? So our value in this case is going to be the name of the song. If you remember from the documentation, it says the default usage of this type as a queue is to use the pushback to add. So we want to add songs. So in order for us to do that, we'll use the pushback method, right? So now we know we want to add values, but for now we'll just use like normal strings, right? So just use a normal string and queue dot pushback. Then we'll go on to cannot mute date variable. Oh, okay. So I have to add a mute here. So it's all part of Rust. So I'll add value there. Then I'll just duplicate that line of code into like 4 places or 5 places. Okay. So I'll say this is value one, value two, value three, value four, and value five. So now, um, we have to kind of like look into the queue to see what we have in our queue, right? What we have in this queue. So in order to do that, I'll just print to the console. So I'll say print line, and there I'll say things in queue. Tired of writing this queue. I'll just write queue. Things in queue, right? And then we want to pass an empty object. Let me format it nicely. Question mark. Okay. What am I doing? Okay. Then I would pass my queue here. So I'll say queue and I'll save. So I would clear terminal and run cargo run again. And it should build and I should be able to see value one, value. So if you look at this place, you see things in queue. You see value one, value two, value three, value four, and value five. So this is how I am then going to, add the names of these songs into the queue, right? So I'm going to, instead of passing these domain names, I'm then going to pass the name of the songs into um, the queue. So yeah, so I would just quickly do that without wasting much time. So I would have those songs in our queue. But before I do that, I'll go ahead and do the implementation for picking the first song on the list, right? The first value or the first song on the list. So I'm just going to say let's sum if let's sum. So I would call it let me use front because I want to play the first element in the front. So then this is where I will now use the q dot pop front, right? Because remember from the documentation, to remove something from the queue, we have to use the pop front itself. So here I would say equals to, so I'll say q. I'm so tired of writing this q dot pop front. And in that place, I will just do a simple print line, and I will just say dequeued, QUED, and then I will just pass the front. So remember this guy here, I'll just pass it here front, and I'll save. So I'll comment out this line so that we can see what we have in our function here, right? Yep. So I would, oh, so I'll just clear and run this again. So you can see that we have dequeued the first value, right? So what I would do now is I would I would show you what is in the original queue, and I would dequeue a value and show you what is in the queue after I've dequeued it. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense? What's in the queue after? Anyways, um, so I would take this line of code and put it down here, right? And I will run this code again. So what would happen here is that when I run this code, this first line runs and it shows everything in the queue. Then this line of code goes ahead to run and it removes the first value from the queue. Then after that is done, we run this particular line to show the current state of the queue. I don't know if that makes sense. That makes sense. So I'll just quickly go ahead and do that. Exactly. So if you take a look at this right now, take a look at this, you would see that this is happening. Increase. Exactly. So you can see that the first part, which is things in the queue, we have value one, value two, value three, four, and five. Then next we dequeue, that is, we remove the first value from the queue. Then we now have the second place where we are showing the things that are in our queue. And here we now have value two, value three, value four, and value five. So with this, you can see that we've successfully removed the first value from our queue. In actual sense, we've played this first song, right? So we've picked the first song and we've played it somehow. But we'll get to that point where I show you how we'll be able to, pick that song, send it to the initial function that we wrote that is going to be in charge of doing the decoding, picking the file from our file system, and doing all those amazing stuffs and playing the sound for us. Um, so I would quickly take this back to my default settings. Okay. So guys, please let me know you know if my code is too small for you guys to see. And please, guys, on Twitter, help me retweet, please. Just help me retweet, like the video, drop a comment. It's the least you could do for me, please. Thank you. So as I was saying, next we would then go ahead to so for the purpose of learning, right, we can go ahead to check the value that is in the front of the queue. So and what this would mean is you can use if I was like building um playlist an ideal music application, right? I would be able I would come to a situation whereby I have to get the name of the current music that I'm supposed to play, and somehow show it to you that is the user that okay, this is the current music that you're playing, right? In an ideal situation. But what we're working on today is just what is happening under, like behind the scenes of of your music players when you add music to your playlist, right? The functionality that powers that particular process. So, but there are some things I could actually go ahead and implement that we could somehow tweak to show the current song that is being played and all that. But I don't really want to go into that. But just for the purpose of learning, I'll just a little bit talk about them a little bit and just quickly write some code and quickly brush on them and move on. So the first one would be to check the element that is in the front. That is the first element, right? The actual word for it is picking. So we want to pick, like, check the element that is at the front. So I'll add a comment for that. For this, I would say I'll add a comment here and say enqueued. Sorry, dequeue an element. Next is to check the front element. Front element. So if you were in my previous live stream, um, you would have seen that, yeah, even if most people were not on that live stream, and because that was the boring part, right? But I did a lot of implementation of like I did the actual queue implementation where I showed how to implement a queue like this and also implement it manually, right? In case you find yourself in like an interview or something like that and you're asked to implement a queue data structure. But that's by the way. But if you want to like get more insights into how that is done, you can go back to my previous stream and I think it's about 56 minutes long. Can go back to my previous stream and I tried my best to explain it as I could to the best of my ability. All right. So here I want to check the first element in the queue. So write a simple function. So not really a function. Just use an if. Let's say sum. So the element at the front. So it's similar to what we did when we were dequeuing. Kind of similar, but not really the same. So we'll say front. And we want to use the queue.front. So back to the documentation again, right? Let me see if I would see where they said something about queue.front. So we have for the length. So this is how we check we can use this particular one to check the number of songs we have on our playlist, right? We would also use that going forward. This is how we can check if the playlist is actually empty, if we played all the songs in the playlist, right? What was I actually looking for? Yeah, front. Okay, so this is what we need here. So the front itself. So provides a reference to the front element or none if the DQ is empty, right? So this is what we need, and this is how it is used. So we've already declared our queue. We've done a pushback, which is adding stuffs. So now we want to get the element that is at the front. So we just call this value, which is this, and on it would call the front. And that is exactly what I'm going to do in this case. So guys, all these things are in the documentation. Right? It's not like I have it automatically on my head. Well, they're all in the documentation. Okay, so here I would say Q guys, I'm lazy, so I just have to pick stuff from I just have to do the easy things. So I'll say front, Q.front, and I want to, print line. So I would say print line. And in that place, I would say I'll call it front, ELE. And yep, so I'll pass my front variable and I'll run it. So if I run this code again, so I'll clear this guys and run it again. So now I should be able to see the original. Okay, so let me remove this line. I don't need it again. So I'll be able to see the queued things. I got this queued things in queue. Then the front element should. So once I run this code, the front element should be value 2, right? That should be like the front element or the current element that's playing, right? So I would cargo run and let this guy run. All right. So looking at it, you'd see that originally we had 5 elements in our queue, but now we've gone ahead to remove the first one, which is why we now have only 4. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's now saying the front ELE, which is coming from this line, is showing that we now have the value 2, completely exempting the value 1 that we had initially added. So this is actually going to show us that our whole queue, whatever, and the queue and whatever is working, right? So sorry guys, sorry about that. Okay, so I was just going on Twitter, kind of addicted to Twitter. Anyways, okay, guys, please help me retweet on Twitter. You can retweet the live. It's possible to do so. I have about 114 people streaming this, and nobody has retweeted. Waiting I do now, I beg. You wanna help me now? Anyways, it's not a must, but still need your help if you're willing to. Anyways, so back to what I was saying. So the last thing I will do now is to to check when the queue is empty, right? So I'll say check if the queue is empty. Okay, what's happening? Check if the queue is empty. And in that place, I'll just do a simple print line. It does not have to be anything special. Queue empty. And I would say um so queue dot is empty. So from the documentation where we saw the is empty, where's that stuff? I is empty. So this guy returns true. So it returns a boolean. Um, it returns a boolean. So it tells us if it is empty or not. So it returns true or false, right? So now we would say is empty and pass that here and we'll call that function. So another thing we can do again is we can check the number of musics in our the number of musics in our queue in the queue, right? So in order to do that, there's another this thing which I initially pointed out, which is the length. So we have so this returns the number of elements in the queue. So we can use this to return the number of elements we have, the number of musics in this case we have in our queue. So guys, thank you so much. I can see Astra Canel on YouTube. Thank you so much. I can see this is Dara. Thank you so much. Joshua Roland, thank you. Guys, the guys on Twitter, thank you so much for coming on here. I really appreciate. So with that being said, I can also add a q.length, q.len, len, and this will give us the length. But this will throw an error because I have to add another curly brackets and save. So with that being done, I will just go ahead and run the code again. So you can see that and I have the queue is empty. It's actually false because it's not empty, and I have 4 elements, right? I have 4 elements in the queue because I actually removed the first one. So if I comment out the part where I'm dequeuing my queue, so if I take this out and I run it, we would have 5 elements in our queue. So if I do that, so you can see we have 5 elements in the queue and it's actually not empty, and we have the original queue, right? So now we've successfully implemented um, the queue um, using we successfully implemented the queue using the inbuilt queue data structure that was created by the language itself without having to manually do that one after the other or do that manually, right? So the next thing I would do now is to think of how am I going to get my musics and pass them to this function and be able to play them in such a way that after I finish playing the first one, I can automatically play the second one and play the third one, right? So one thing about this about programming in general is you have to break down problems into small units. So we'd first of all figure out how we can pass our songs first. Let's play one song first. Then after that, we'll start thinking of how we can, go ahead to play the songs sequentially. And with that, we would have gradually come to the end of this stream, right? We would have successfully achieved what we want to do. So the first thing I would do is to think of how I will be able to pass my song into the queue, right? Remember, I have the value one, value two, value three. Those are not the guys I need. The guys I actually need are the songs I have here, right? So for instance, this particular thriller cinema is one song I really like. So guys, once again, if you want to get this song, there is is a no copyright place called Pix, I think is it Pixabay or something like that. Yeah. So you can get free music from here. I would have loved to use, music from guys like Burna Boy, Davido, or my personal person, Happy. But those musics are copyrighted. So I can't use them in this stream. So you can get free music from here in case you want to work on this on your own and you're wondering where I got those music from. You can get them from here. So I already did that, and I have them um in my code base. So what I would do is I would play one music first, right? First of all, let me even confirm that I have a music in my playlist. Playlist is this queue here. So I'll say this is my playlist. So this is my hypothetical playlist in actual sense. So I will comment out the rest of these guys and I will just get this particular song. So rename, see, copy that, come back here. And I will pass that string into this place. So instead of passing the value one, I will just pass the name of the music here, right? I would save it. And also, I will take out the place where we are removing the first element from the queue because I don't want to do that. I just want to show what is inside my queue, right? What I have on my playlist, that's what I want to show. So I would comment this back in. I don't need these other lines. I'll put them back, but for now, I just need a clean terminal. So I'll save all this clear. Then I don't know why this thing is keep showing. Okay, keep showing. So I'll run again. And when I run that, I should be able to see the name of that song. So you can see, right? I have an array here, and it contains the name of that song. So now I've confirmed that. Okay, actually have the name of this song in my playlist, which is the queue. Right? Actually have the name of this song in my playlist. So the next thing I'm going to do now is how do I then add this song to how do I play this song, right? How do I get this song from my queue, pop it out and push it into the function for the function to now handle the rest, where it plays the song and does all those amazing things, right? So that's where the queuing part of this comes into place. So this function that we had initially written, I'll go ahead and comment it back in, and in this place, right? In this place, I will then call our function. So if you remember, for those that joined the stream earlier on, um, I initially created this function that is in charge of, you know, creating an output stream, creating a sync that enables us to play the music, getting the file from our file system and playing it. Right, that's the summary of what this function does. Right. So I'm now going to call this function where I am actually dequeuing. That is where I'm actually removing that first element or that first song or that first value from our queue. So I would say play songs, and in that place, I would then pass this value. So remember, this value was what we logged, right? What we printed to the terminal. So before I will even do the printing, I will just pass that a reference to that value into our song. So I will also call it what's it called? I would say front. So reference pass front. And yeah, so Rust is going to tell me that the function actually expected zero argument but found one. So what this means is the function is not expecting any argument, so it's not expecting anything here. But I've actually gone ahead to add an argument here. So in order to solve that problem, I would have to go and pass that value here. So I would call it here. I'll call it song, and it would be a string slice. String str. Yeah. So it would be a string slice. Save this. So if we do that, that error should have gone. So we don't have that error again. So with this, right, we've taken our song, so the name of our song, we've pushed it into our queue, we've added it to our playlist. Now we want to play that song, right? We want to actually play that song and see how see if we'll be able to play one song first before we start bothering about playing the song and behaving like an actual what's it called? An actual playlist, because a playlist will play the first song. After that, it automatically go to the second song, the third song, unless you put it on repeat or you shuffle it. So those are different functionalities that I said I was not going to touch on because those are different functionalities, or that they are completely different from the scope of. It's kind of similar to what we are doing, but you know, not really. It makes the whole thing a little bit complicated. So let's just focus on one part and get it done. So now that we've added the song to our like we've added the song to the function that is going to play it. So we'll just go ahead and um test this out and see. So I will clear my terminal and I will run. So hopefully, I hope this works. All things being equal. Okay. Okay. So you can see that it immediately played and logged here and said it dequeued that particular song, and it ended. The reason it ended is because I set it to play for 10 seconds, right? I could actually set it to play for longer. I can say, okay, let's do something like 30 seconds and it will play longer than that. So let's run that code again. So if you look at the terminal, you will see that the process is still running because it has not logged what we dequeued, right? So after 30 seconds, it will log it. After 30 seconds, it will log it and exactly. So it has logged it. So our 30 seconds has elapsed and we've played that song, right? So the next step now is to let's add the rest of the songs to the queue, right? So we've done this part, it works, so we're sure of that. So we have to go to the next step, the next process, which is the process of adding the songs to the queue. So I will just quickly go ahead and get the name of those songs and add them without much explanation. So do that, uh, added that one. The next one. So I have really um, easy ways or shortcuts of doing things that makes life easy for me. So this is one of them. Paste this here. Indian, then horror. Rename. So you're able to see. Paste this here. So it's many one. The dark engine. Let me just copy that. So name. Control A, Control C. Then Q. Oh, undo. Sorry. Okay. So Q. Push back. Save. So let's test again. Um, hopefully, right, as we test, let's hope that it would pick the second song in the queue, right, on the playlist. Let's hope, but I know that's not going to happen, but let's just hope that it happens, right? So um, clear, clear this guy and run that code again. So we'll play for 30 seconds. Okay, so it was supposed to pick the second song in the playlist, but it didn't, right? So we have to think about it. So how do we get it to do that in actual sense? Because in a real world, in a real world playlist or music application, right? The music have to, like, when you put it in that process where it goes from the first music to the second to the third, the fourth, that has to happen. right? So we now have to think of how are we going to tweak what we already have. We are close to the final what we are looking for, but we have to tweak it a little bit to the point where we can now, by itself, it picks this music from our file system, and plays it sequentially, right? So in that case, we have to start thinking of how we can, you know, loop through these songs, right? How we can loop through these songs. And one way we can do that is still around this guy, this guy here, the DQ guy, right? So if you remember initially, for those of us that were here, I did something with checking the length of the queue. So the number of songs in the playlist, right? So I did something with that. So I can actually use that guy to write you know, a kind of a loop, a while loop that checks for the length. So if that length is not equals to zero, so if the length, that is, if the music list is not empty, we would keep, playing. We'll play the next song. We'll continue playing it until it is empty. Then we'll stop. Right. So what I would do at this point, I would say while while the queue dot length um, is not equals to zero, I want to, so while it is not equals to zero, so while it is not empty, right? I want to keep running this particular code. I want to keep playing the music, right? So I would come here and do this, and let us hope for the best. So now I've actually reduced. I have to reduce this to 10 seconds because it's too long. Even seven is okay. It's too long. So while what's happening? Okay, I have to call this guy function. Mhm. Yep. What else? What else? Okay, so cargo fmt first. Format that so it looks clean. So take note, we are checking for the length. So we are saying if our array, if not array, sorry, if our queue, if our playlist is not empty, let's keep playing the songs, right? So after we are done playing the first one, we'll check, is the playlist empty? No, it's not. We'll play the next one, right? After we are done with the next one, which is the second one, we'll check, is the playlist empty? No, it is not. We'll play the third one. We'll keep doing that. We'll keep doing that until the playlist is empty. So one thing I can do is I can always print the length, right? Or I could actually print the next music that is playing. Um, Let me give that a try. So I'll say print line, and here I'll say current song playing, and I would just pass the name, which is the front, and the number of that song. So I'll say another one. The number is going to be the queue dot length. Sorry, right? Exactly. So I'll save this, and so once we check if it's not empty, we'll play that song. After we've played that song, um, no, I can't. I have to do this in here. I can do this here. Comment this guy out. Save. Mhm. Save again. So let's see what happens, right? So I'll clear this. Hopefully this works. Hopefully it works. Um, so I'll play this again. So it's playing the first music. Okay, so it has played that one. So it's playing. um, hmm. Oh, I see. It's playing the songs on repeat. It's not playing. So we have a bug, right? We have a bug. Something weird is happening, and I know what is happening, right? So it's going to play these songs 5 times until it gets to zero, and I know why that is happening. It was a funny mistake from me. A funny mistake from me. So, but one thing to look out for here is that if you take a look, you would see that we went from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0 till we stopped playing. But the issue we had now is that we kept on playing the same song, which is the first song. And the reason for this is because we passed that song manually here, right? The tactical thriller song, we passed it here. If you remember, we had actually called this guy, which is the play song function. We had passed the current song that is playing into the play song. We had also gotten it here, right? But I then forgot to, pass that value here. So that's why we had it playing 5 times, right? And the reason it was playing 5 times is because we actually added five songs to our playlist. So what I would do is I would take this guy out and I'll add song there, right? So I'll save this, and hopefully this time around it should everything should go well. So I would clear once again, and I would run this. Can go run. So hopefully it should play the first song, play the second one. This is the first song. So it's now playing the second one. It's playing the third one. It's playing the fourth one. Exactly. So you can now see that we've been able to play the songs, you know, one after the other gradually, you know, um, by doing so, right? So I guess that's like basically, um, you know, that's like basically everything, right? So we've been able to write a, a helper function that plays the songs for us using the Rodeo crate. We also use the buff reader and the file system to load those musics and append it at the end of the day to sync, which helped us to stream it for 7 seconds each. We then went ahead to implement a queue um, data structure in Rust using the vec dq this thing from Rust itself, instead of doing it manually. Then we added a couple of songs, right, to our playlist. Then we were able to, um, you know, loop through these songs, check if our playlist is empty, that is, if we've played any of those songs, and um, you know, play the next. So we could actually take this a step further, right? We could start thinking of ways that we could do stuffs like randomizing the music, right? So if you, in your popular or your popular music app, something like Spotify or YouTube Music, you can shovel a music, right? You can shovel your playlist, right? So in that case, in that situation, we might have to write an algorithm that does the shuffling and also makes sure that it is not repeating a particular song that has been repeated before, unless all the songs in the playlist has been played. So what would happen in that case is we'll pick songs in no particular order and making sure that we don't repeat a song that has repeated until we finish all the song in the playlist. So that's how the shuffle will work, right? In a reward application, depending on the requirements, right? We can also add like a repeat, right? We can add like a repeat functionality where if you love the song so much, you would want to continue playing that particular song, so you can put it on repeat. So we can also do that. Yeah. So looking at this code, right, it's not clean enough. There are a lot of cleanups to be done here. For instance, um, I could go on to add some error handling, right, especially for when I'm reading the file from the file system in case there's no song at all. How do I handle that situation? I can go ahead to do that, but I won't do that. Or should I do that? Hmm. Um, I don't know, but we could do that, right? Add better error handling. At least I know that that's the only thing I've not done at this point. Adding error handling to make this better, a little bit better than what we have right now. It's not that difficult to do, um, but I'm not sure I have the strength to do that because this stream has already lasted way into 1 hour 30 minutes. Um, Guys, please, if you want me to do that, please just leave a comment, um, or maybe you guys can, in your own time, you can go and geek it out, just for the purpose of learning, right? But ideally, if I was going to like do stuff like error handling, I would use the result enum, pass it somewhere here, and I would also handle some kind of. I'll use a I could I could give the bare bones. I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean by that, Marcus. What do you mean by the bare bones? Please, can you explain a little bit? Oh, okay, okay, that's fine. So hmm, okay. So someone says I could just give the bare bones and you guys continue on your this thing. Okay, so what would happen is on YouTube, please guys go and follow me on YouTube, please. Thank you so much. On YouTube, I would be adding a link to a GitHub repository. Oh, okay. So the high level overview of that would be so that is Rust error handling, right? Um, we can use the result enum. So let me check for that. So say results enum Rust. Yeah. So we could use this to handle the error, right? So when it is successful, we'll return an okay response, and when there is an error, we'll just panic, right? So you could dive deep into how this works, but it's really not that complex, right? When you read the documentation and all that, right? But in this case, if I was to do that, this function, the function that plays the music, right, would have to return the function would have to return the result, right? I would have to, pass an okay somewhere here, something like this, right? Then I'll return result here, right? And in that result, because from the documentation, you can already see that we have, um, the generic, right? This is a generic. So we can just pass an empty, what's it called again? What's what that thing is called? We can pass parentheses, right? And then in there we can now pass the error itself. So there's that is a box dynamic, and in that box dynamic we have the standard library, and in there we have error. So it is kind of nested, right? We can go deep to get to kind of handle the error. I'm trying to get my words together. But basically that's like a high level overview of how we could, you know, handle the error in this case, right? Another place again that we could add a little bit of improvements to the code is here where we are passing the musics, right? We could use pattern matching, right? So we could use pattern matching to check, before we add musics to the before we pass musics to after. Sorry, we can use pattern matching on the play songs itself, right? So I think I'll just go ahead and do that. So it's quite easy. So this we can just do match, and am I doing match? And here we can then um, do something like this. So we'll do our okay here, right? So okay, we'll pass underscore say we'll just print something, right? So it's this print that we have here. We'll take it here, and next we'll move this is comma, and we'll now pass our error uh, and in here. Pass our err. So this is part of what that function, the play song function, will return, right? So let me just go ahead and do that. So in here we have the print line, print line, and we just pass just something simple, something very simple like this, right? Then I can go to this place and return the result. So I already have my result this thing here, and in there I can pass this, and once I do that, I will box, and in my box have dyn and std error error, right? Yep. So okay, I'll close this again. Yeah. So this is just it, right? This is how we could handle our errors in a better way. Okay. So this is how we could handle our errors, just to make it a little bit better. But what you could do after this is to think of how you can implement an algorithm for handling the shuffle, like I had explained, right? How to pick those songs. So these songs we have here in no particular order, and play them randomly, but making sure that um, you must have picked each and every one of them before playing anyone the second time, right? If that makes sense. You can also implement something like a repeat functionality, right? That goes ahead to repeat a particular song that you love so much, right? So if I save this and I still run that code, I believe this should work. So I'll just clean this up a little bit. Yeah, the code is messed up. It's messy, but it works, and it works. So mhm. Tuple variant is similar. Okay, exists. Mm, okay. Yep. So if I have this here, I don't have to have what's happening. Do cannot find the function of this in this scope. Okay, let me run this first and see. Clear. Hmm. Okay, so how this? Oh, I remember. So I'm also supposed to add this to. I'm supposed to add it here also. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so we have the error dyn print line. Mhm. Push back q. Okay, so the main function also. I see. So going to return the result. So okay, going to return the result. So basically, I'll just copy this what I have here. Mhm. What I have here. Oh, who is messaging me? Okay, paste it here and see what happens. Oh, okay. So yeah, let me run that code and see. Triple variant with similar. What is the capitalization? Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Capitalization. So, guys, this is one of the amazing things about Rust, right? Um, you can see how helpful the the compiler is, right? You can see how helpful these error messages are, right? It's even telling me that I have an unused variable song, but it's just a warning, right? It's just a warning that I have an unused variable called song. Then it goes ahead to tell me that okay, it a tuple variant with a similar name exists. Notice the capitalization, right? It's telling me that I made mistake in the capitalization, and this is one of the amazing things about Rust that many people don't understand, right? The error messages are awesome, right? And since I've corrected that, hopefully, I believe this should solve my problem. And if it doesn't, the compiler is still there for me. So I'll clear this to give me. I'll run it again. So you see, it works. So guys, when we tell people that Rust has like the best error messages, right? When you use a language like, I'm not bashing JavaScript, right? But when you use a language like JavaScript, you see weird error messages that makes life difficult for you. But it's not the same in Rust, and that's why I love this language. So guys, thank you so much for um, joining me on this. I can see the support on X. It's amazing. Guys, please help me go on YouTube, drop a comment, share the video with anyone that might be interested. Thank you guys once again for joining me on this one, and I will see you guys in the next one. And also, before I leave, um, I'll be adding a link to the GitHub for this for those that are interested in taking this um, further. So once again, thank you guys, and I will see you next time. Bye. Peace.